Shabbat Shalom. Going to be reading today's teaching. All right, so today we're going to be speaking about Zechariah. We're going to be speaking about this book of Zechariah. Typically, what leadership has been doing with the books is that they had been, I normally do this thing where I give an intro where I kind of talk about what I'm going to talk about, and then it just goes like in circles. Let's just start. Let's just go to the book of Zechariah. So, Zechariah. Anybody know what Zechariah means? Zechariahu or Zechariah. Zechariah means remembered of Yah. Zachar, to remember. Yah, a shortened poetic name for God. So, God remembers. Zachariahu, God remembers us. This is written and happening at a time when the Israelites had just come back into the promised land. They had spent like a generation in exile, feeling forgotten by God. Even though he had said through his prophets, I have plans to prosper you, plans for a hope in a future. But after 70 years of not being in the land, not having the blessings of the land, not having the protection of the land, and living in an uncomfortable worldly environment, they felt most likely forgotten. And his name means God remembers us. First thing I'd like to take from that is just, in a time when you feel forgotten by God, he remembers you. He remembers you. You might feel like you're still in exile. Many of the people who were in Babylon and Persia, all those surrounding nations, they didn't come back to Israel when God had made a way for them. When Cyrus issued the decree and later on Darius issued the decree, they stayed where they were. They didn't come back to the love of God. They didn't come back to the promises of God or to the promised land, and they stayed comfortable in their land or in that exile land. Is that our state today? Are we more comfortable in South Africa? Maybe not South Africa with the current, situation. It's not the most ideal country unless you've got solar power or you've got diesel trees or something. But I still think some of us would sometimes prefer to be here than to be in the land. Being in the land is way different because over here, the majority of people don't respect Shabbat, for instance. So when you're keeping Shabbat, it looks like you're going against the grain. It's uncomfortable. You're the sore thumb that sticks out. But in Israel, when you're the one who doesn't keep Shabbat, you look weird. Even if you're secular, even if you don't believe in God, it's just, what are you doing? It's Shabbat. What are you doing? There were people who would lie down in front of tanks, in front of cars, lie down on the street on some, you're not driving on Shabbat. No, what are you doing? They were that passionate about Shabbat. And the thing is, if we were to move there, your life would dramatically change. And I feel like sometimes some of us, we like the complacency of being in exile. It's not ideal all the time because of every country has its things, but do you recognize the importance of what it means to be in covenant and be in the promised land? Because there's certain responsibilities that come from being in the promised land, which is why God kicked them out, because they weren't keeping those responsibilities. And you need to recognize that as much as we say, okay, we're in exile, we want to go back, but are you really ready for that? What that would look like? One of the things I used to ask myself when I was maybe writing a song or doing some work or whatever, I'd ask myself, are these lyrics, is this song, is this beat, whatever it is it going to survive when the Messiah is here? In other words, I look at all the famous artists today, the Drake, the Beyonce, the whoever you want to name. They're very popular right now, but when Messiah is here, will their songs still be top of the charts? Is that likely? Will their songs even exist? They'll probably get deleted, type of thing. And I started asking myself, is what I'm creating right now going to survive when Messiah comes? Am I going to have to get rid of everything I have? Would he call me and say, hey, Billy, come and perform at the capital, come and perform in Israel, because I can see that your heart is truly for God? Or am I just singing to, sound good? I think there's lots of Christians as well who won't make that cut. When I say Christians, I mean Christian artists. They sing gospel and all of that, but I don't think Messiah would call them and say, hey, come and sing before the king. Because that's different. That's before the king. That's like, that's the king of the universe. That's Messiah. And that's God. That's not child's play. The businesses that we're in, the software that you're making, can that software survive the test of time? Will it be there when Messiah is here? Is it for profit only, to the point that you don't care about people as long as you've made your money? Are you working for a company like that? Sometimes your boss is your boss. There's nothing you can do. And the Bible tells us to pray for our masters. It tells us to respect them, even the ones that are harsh. So I'm not saying you should all now go quit your jobs, but I'm saying think about, what are you investing in? Are you investing in something that is only going to last now, pre-tribulation, before Messiah comes? Or are you investing in something that's going to last even when we're in the promised land? That's what I'm trying to say. Are you really building a legacy that can survive eternity? Or is it going to get burned up by the fire when Messiah is here? Something to consider. Another aspect of God remembering us and us coming back into the land, or back into the promised land. You see, so today we're not in the promised land. Some are, but we're not. We're still in exile. But we are still in the promises of God. Part of that promise is salvation. Part of that promise is the job you prayed for, the wife you prayed for, the children you're praying for. The benefits of being in covenant. When God says, if you will listen to all my mitzvot and do what I say, then all these blessings shall be yours in abundance. So everything in Deuteronomy 28, basically, will be yours in abundance. If you obey. That's a blessing. It's a promise. But now, can you keep your job, your blessed marriage, your really obedient children, your fill in the blank, whatever it is you prayed for that God promised you? Can you keep it if you don't have the responsibility of what it means to be in the promise? If you start behaving like, I would have gotten this anyway on my own, God might want to give you a wake-up call. I think sometimes we forget that we prayed so hard for the job we had, and then we start hating it. And it's like, I gotta go to work. But 2 years ago, you were crying for this job. Now you're treating this job that way. The Bible says, respect your masters with the same reverence and fear with which you give the Messiah. So if you're like, I gotta go to work, you're saying that to Messiah. And people are seeing that. Your children are seeing that, your husband's seeing that, your wife's seeing that, your co-workers are seeing that. Maybe you guys giggle about your boss, I don't know. But it's the same thing as giggling about Messiah. So it seems to me that this book, Zechariah, is leading us to remember as God has remembered us. Keeping in mind that it's not that God had forgotten, but in the Hebrew sense, when God remembers you, He acts on your behalf. It's like the time has come for me to act. That is what it means. So He didn't forget that Noah was on the boat. When it says He remembered Noah, it just means the time came for Him to act. So, as God has remembered us that we shouldn't stay in our struggles forever, let's remember Him and remember the covenant that we made. The theme of late has been, come back to your first love. Remember your first love. And, I know with me, no one could tell me anything when it came to that first passion, the first fire that I had for God. It didn't matter if you were going with me or not, I was going. And I was going all the time, and I was like on fire for God. Do I have that all the time? I've got to ask myself. I may be comfortable where I am because maybe I've gotten my job, I've gotten my whatever. Things are nice. But that's the most dangerous place to be. That is the most dangerous place to be. Comfortable. Growth and comfort do not go hand in hand. I was listening to a teaching where this guy was saying, when you want to grow, when you want to grow your muscles, you do the insane. You kind of kill your muscles. You put them under strain, and you like do these exercises, and you do them over and over and over and over until you can't do them anymore, and then your muscle tears. You eat a bit and you grow. You do that again and you do that again, and basically you're going to gain muscle. But somehow, when it comes to growing as Christians or as individuals, we don't want to put ourselves under strain. We don't understand that if you want to be able to pick up more, you need to tell your arm that you're not strong enough. Keep going. You're not strong enough. Keep going. You're not strong enough. And then it gives up. And it's like, I got to get stronger. So it gets bigger. And now I can pick up more. And then you do that again. And you do that again. And when God loads you with all this stuff that you can't bear, it's not because He has forgotten you. It's the contrary. It's because He has remembered you. But if you're going to grow, you're going to need to pick up some weight. And you're going to need to do that repetitively. Sometimes you might be like, how am I still going through this? How is this still happening? But it's because you're gymming. You don't go into the gym, do one rep, and you're done. You push until, and if you got a gym buddy, he pushes you until you can't. That's a good gym buddy. So some of us, we want God to be our gym buddy. We want Yeshua, the Holy Spirit, to be our gym buddy, but we're like, nah, it's one rep. Come on, guys. What gym is that? There's this one meme. Let me not go too far. Okay. God has remembered us. God has remembered us. Let's start in chapter 1. This book is written around, let's see if there's any Bible scholars. When was Zechariah written? Okay, we've got some Bible scholars. Okay. 520 BC, roughly, yes. And who was it written by? Anybody want to guess who Zechariah was written by?
It says the commentaries are that it's a composition of various people's words.
Keep going.
Amongst others, Zechariah.
Okay, Zechariah wrote the book of Zechariah, and then we're going to start just now. I just want to see if there's any background I want to give you before we get into this. Last week, Bruce was doing Haggai, and Haggai and Zechariah were kind of contemporaries. They prophesied at the same time. It's a good idea if you're going to read through Zechariah to read through Haggai as well. Just study them together. In fact, the first vision or the first prophecy, I think, came about. Sorry, let me not misquote this. Sorry, I didn't write this down, but I'll come back to you on that. Anyways, let's get into verse 1, chapter 1. Any questions so far? Yes.
This also, it's a good idea to read Zechariah and Haggai with Israel.
Yes.
Because they were at the time of Israel coming back and rebuilding.
Yes.
And their prophecy that son was at that time, so they could also lay down a good foundation.
Just want to repeat that for the camera. It's a good idea to read Zechariah with Haggai and Ezra because they were kind of like part of the same exile. Ezra was the second to go out. in the exile, and then you had Haggai kind of like, on the one side telling them, why aren't you working on God's house? And kind of like encouraging them. Then you had Zechariah on the other side, guys, let's work on God's house, type of thing. But either way, they were at the same time, and yes, it's a good idea to read all three.
So I think what you want to say is that there were 2 months difference between the first vision
Yes.
of Haggai and the first vision of Zechariah.
Thank you. Yes, there were 2 months difference between the first vision of Haggai and the first vision of Zechariah. Thanks. So it was really, really close. It wasn't like years apart. Thanks. Okay, chapter 1, verse 1. Are we good? Okay. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Dariavesh, the following message from Adonai came to Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet. Okay, so Zechariah, we've already spoken about. It means God has remembered us, or God remembers. Okay, Berechiah, or Berechiah, or any takers? Excuse me? So yeah, Baruch or Berech, that part would be the blessing, and then Yah, blessed of Yah, or God blesses. Ne? We together? Okay, so the word of Adonai came to Zechariah, God remembers, the son of Berechiah, God blesses, the son of Iddo. What does Iddo mean? Iddo means timely or in time. So, at a time when they feel forgotten, God is basically saying, I remember you, and my blessing is on time. You might feel like God's blessing is late, like it's taking too long to get here. I've been praying for 2 years, I've been praying for 2 days, I've been praying for however, fill in the blank, but he says, I've remembered you, and my blessing is on time. It is not late. Okay, so this is what he said. Adonai was extremely angry with your ancestors. Therefore, tell them that Adonai Tzvaot says this. Return to me, says Adonai Tzvaot, and I will return to you, says Adonai Tzvaot. Don't be like your ancestors, the earlier prophets proclaimed to them. Let me just read that again. Don't be like your ancestors. The earlier prophets proclaimed to them, Adonai Tzvaot says to turn back from your evil ways and deeds, but they didn't listen or pay attention to me, says Adonai. Your ancestors, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my laws, which I ordered my servants the prophets, overtook your ancestors, didn't they? Then they turned and said, Adonai has dealt with us according to our ways and our deeds, just as he intended to. On the 24th day of the 11th month, the month of Shevat, in the 2nd year of Dariavesh, this message from Adonai came to Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet. It was night, and I saw there before me a man riding on a russet-colored horse. He stood among the myrtle bushes in the valley, and behind him were the other horses, russet, chestnut-colored, and white. I asked, What are these, my Lord? The angel speaking with me said to me, I will show you what these are. The man standing among the myrtle said, These are those whom Adonai has sent to wander throughout the earth. Then they themselves answered the angel of Adonai standing among the myrtles, We have been wandering throughout the earth, and the whole world is quiet and at peace. And the angel of Adonai said, Adonai Tzvaot, how long will you keep withholding mercy from Yerushalayim and the cities of Yehuda? You've been angry with them for the past 70 years. Adonai replied with kind and comforting words to the angel who was speaking with me. The angel speaking with me then said to me, Here is what Adonai Tzvaot says. I am extremely jealous on behalf of Yerushalayim and Zion, and to the same degree, I am extremely angry with the nations that are so self-satisfied, because I was only a little angry at Yerushalayim and Zion, but they made the suffering worse. Therefore, Adonai says, I will return to Yerushalayim with merciful deeds. My house will be rebuilt there. says Adonai Tzvaot, and a measuring line will be stretched out over Yerushalayim. In addition, proclaim that Adonai Tzvaot says, my cities will again overflow with prosperity. Adonai will again comfort Zion, and he will again make Yerushalayim the city of his choice. I'm going to keep reading a couple. So, hold on. Then I looked up and I saw 4 horns. I asked the angel who was speaking to me, what are these? He answered, these are the horns that scattered Yehuda, Israel, and Yerushalayim. Next, Adonai showed me 4 artisans. I asked, what are these coming to do? He said, those horns that scattered Yehuda so completely that no one could even raise his head, well, these men have come to terrify them, to overthrow the nations that raised their horns against the land of Judah to scatter it. I looked up and saw a man with a measuring line in his hand. Okay, let's pause there. Okay, so, coming back to chapter 1. Return to me, says Adonai Tzvaot, and I will return to you. That, I believe, has to be the crux of everything and the theme of this book. If you are not returned unto Adonai, what conversation can we have? Expect judgment. Expect to be kicked out. Expect the worst. But if we can get on the same page right from the jump, return to me and I will return to you, then we've got something to talk about. Recognize that he says in verse 4, don't be like your ancestors. The earlier prophets proclaimed to them, Adonai Tzvaot says to turn back from your evil ways and deeds. Sometimes we comfort ourselves by saying, well, so-and-so does such and such, so it should be fine for me to do the same. My dad does such and such, so it should be fine for me to do the same. My mom did such and such. If I was to see someone who has walked longer than me in the walk, and they're doing something I thought should not be done, but I wasn't 100% sure. When I see that, I can become more accustomed to doing that thing simply because they're doing it. But Adonai is saying, don't be like your ancestors. We're living in a time when our ancestors have inherited lies. They have made traditions of men and called those God's instructions. Don't be like your ancestors. Just because they all want to celebrate those feasts and whatnot doesn't mean that we have to, just because we're in the same family, just because your granddaddy did it and your great-granddaddy did it and whatever, it doesn't matter. Don't be like your ancestors. And he says that the words of the prophets overtook their ancestors. I want to speak about something. This verse here stands out to me, verse 4. Don't be like your ancestors. The earlier prophets proclaimed to them, Adonai Tzvaot says, turn back now from your evil ways and deeds, but they didn't listen or pay attention to me. I'd like to ask a question. What is evil? In your own words.
Going against God's word. Anything that opposes God's word.
Okay, going against God's word. Would you, typically when you think of evil, that guy is evil, we don't use that word in everyday language. But when you think of that, you're thinking of the worst of the worst, like the murderer, the rapist,
Someone who enjoys,
okay?
someone who finds pleasure in their life.
All right, no, I hear you, definitely, and I agree with Rach as well. I want to say that sometimes we reserve that word for the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
But if we were to go back to the Torah and find the times when God describes the word evil, there's a time when the Israelites are grumbling and complaining, and he is like, this evil congregation. Actually, you know, let's can we go there? I don't know if you guys, just give me a second. Let's go to Numbers 14:27. Let's start at verse 26. Ready? Okay. No? Okay. Just give it a sec. So, another place, if you are taking notes, that you could look for this would be Deuteronomy 1, verse 35. Or you could go from verse 34 to 36. We're going to go there next. And then also verse 39. Are we good? Okay. So, verse 27 of chapter 14. No, verse 26. Oh, okay. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "How long am I to put up with this evil community who keep grumbling about me? I have heard the complaints of the people of Israel, which they continue to raise against me." You can be in the congregation and God can say, "You are evil." It's not my words. It's not my words. Sometimes we get comfortable that I'm going to church, I'm keeping Shabbat, I'm doing the feast, I'm attending Bible study, but you can still be classified as evil within the congregation. He said only 2 people of that congregation were not evil, Caleb and Joshua, and those who were too young to understand good from evil. So you could be in the church and it's either you're good, you're evil, or you're too young to know the difference. But if you're complaining about what's happening in your life, recognize that Adonai says, "How long am I to put up with this evil community that keeps grumbling about me? I've heard their complaints." And then he goes on to say they won't enter into the promises. So we're talking about Zechariah, where they are coming back into the promised land, right? They're entering into the promises. But if you're going about grumbling, you are disqualifying yourself from that promise. You are the one who is putting another nail in the coffin, and God is going to be like, "How long am I going to put up with you?" There's a story of a tree, a parable of a tree, that Yeshua comes to the tree. Well, it doesn't say it's Yeshua, but the guy who planted the tree comes to the tree and he's like, "This tree, I've come 3 years expecting to see fruit, but there isn't none. Cut it down. Why let it go on using up the soil?" The soil, or would represent the land of Israel, the promised land. And it's like, how long am I going to let this tree use up the space of this promise? It's not bearing any fruit. It's just complaining the whole time about how tough this is, or how tough that is, or how long this is taking. And he's like, "Cut it down. Why let it go on using up the soil?" The gardener then says, "No, let's not cut it. Let's put some manure, let's dig around it, and then come back next year, maybe you'll find some fruit." God is merciful, but there is an end to that. There's an expiry date. I don't know how to put it. You don't know when your last day on earth might be. You don't know when Yeshua is coming back. And you don't want to harden your heart to the point that whether you're dead or alive, it doesn't make a difference. That you're just going to do what you're going to do. And can I tell you, the most dangerous distraction, or rather the most dangerous threat to our lives is just distractions. The thorns in the story of the seeds. Because those are the luxuries and the worries. Have you become so fixated on getting a PS5, on getting a new car, on buying a new house, whatever, fill in the blank, that's you, that's what's on your mind all the time? Or are you so worried about paying the rent, how you're going to afford petrol, whatever the case might be? Those two things, they're so creepy, they're so subtle in the way that they choke out the fruit from you, the life from you, that you don't recognize it. A blessing looks like a blessing. Baruch Hashem, I can afford a PS5. Nothing wrong with PS5s, I think. But if it gets to the point where it's choking out the fruit from your life, it's a problem. Whatever it is, could be a relationship. If it's choking out the fruit, if the opportunity for you to bear fruit is less because this thing is in your life, you need to get rid of it. Otherwise, the gardener, the vine dresser, is going to get rid of you. Whatever branch does not bear fruit, what does he do? He cuts it. So, let that be something on our minds. Okay, so, coming back to Zechariah. He says, turn back now from your evil ways. So I want you to not just think of, okay, I didn't keep Shabbat last week, I need to do better. Yes, that's part of the list. But don't just think of that kind of stuff. Don't just think of the fact that I lied yesterday. Or don't just think of the fact that I got frustrated at my husband. Those are good, but dig deeper. Don't just look at the things that people can see. Check even the things that people cannot see. What is evil in your life? And it could be as simple as the fact that you're always complaining about something that God has given you, whatever it is. And we know Paul has said, I've learned to be content, whether I have much or I have little. Either way, it's all in God's hands. He is in charge. And He has deemed it fit that I have what I have for the time that I have it. So Baruch Hashem, it's His plan. I'm not going to tell Him He's wrong. He's the potter. He's the potter. So if I'm in front of a sea and Pharaoh is coming behind me, the answer is not to complain. The answer is to say, okay, something's clearly about to happen because God's not going to let me die. He's not just going to leave me. He didn't bring me this far to leave me. Anticipate it. Yes. Anticipate God's work in your life. Yes. Absolutely. And that's what God says. Like, why are you crying to me? Tell the people to go forward. It's like, Moses, you should have already known this. Are you not the leader? So, when it comes to the sea, God can cause you to walk on dry land. He can cause you to walk on water. Where's your faith? Point is, you're getting to the other side. You get across. Don't trust in the boat. The disciples were trusting in the boat and rowing and rowing and rowing, and Yeshua's there is walking on the water. The boat is not what gets you across, and the boat could represent your job, your family, your husband, could represent anything. Whatever it is that makes you feel secure, that without this thing I feel like I'm going to sink. But you need to realize that the boat is not what's keeping you up. Because even with the boat you can sink, which is what almost happened when Yeshua was sleeping and water was coming in. The important thing is Yeshua here? Is He the one that sent us across? Then we're on the right journey. We keep going. We keep going. It was His instruction. Let's get back to Zechariah. Okay, so let's get into the visions. So I neglected to give you guys an outline of the book. Sorry about that. The book has a structure like this. I don't have a PowerPoint, sorry, but pretty sure you can follow along. It's not complicated. There's an introduction, which we've just read through, that goes up to verse 6. Then there's 8 visions. There's a series of 8 visions. And after the visions, then there's this coronation scene of Yehoshua, the high priest, which mirrors Yeshua, but we might get there. I don't think we'll get there today. Then there's judgment and redemption at the end. So I'd give you the verses, but it would probably just be numbers right now. But if you want the verses, I can give you the outline afterwards, and then we can break it up like that. So let's get into the first vision, or we've already read it. Let's talk about it. There was a man by myrtle bushes. Anybody have an idea where myrtle comes up in the Bible? I'm just going to read that verse again if you guys are not sure what I'm talking about. On the 24th day of the 11th month, actually before we get to the myrtle bushes, we're currently on the 20th day of the 11th month. I thought this was pretty relevant, that we're studying this book at the same time of year as God had given this message to Zechariah. that it was on the 24th of the 11th month. Today is the 20th of the 11th month of Shevat. So I think it's quite timely. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so myrtles. Where do we see myrtles in the Bible?
Zechariah.
This guy. Besides Zechariah. Excuse me? In a sheaf that we wave. Where do we wave that sheaf thingy? Excuse me? Which first fruits? The Feast of First Fruits? Because there's the Feast of First Fruits, which is like the first one. But then there's two other first fruits feasts. Tabernacles. Yes, Sukkot. It's one of the species that you do wave it. It's one of the species that you put together. Got the 4 species. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, what am I talking about, Oliver?
I don't remember what it is though.
The wave offering. What are the 4?
There's a lemon,
Okay, there's an etrog, yes. A lemon thingy. The willow.
bottle brush,
Okay,
the myrtle,
which is the myrtle.
palm, yes.
There we go. Okay, so do you guys remember when we were at the farm and then we were like doing dance moves? Do you guys remember? That was Sukkot, right? And then we were waving in 4 directions and up and down. So the myrtle bush here is reminding us of that. Now, when we're thinking about myrtle, especially when you see the rest of this, let's read through it step by step. Let me not skip anything. Okay, verse 8. It was at night, and I saw there before me a man riding on a russet-colored horse. He stood among the myrtle bushes in the valley, and behind him were other horses, russet, chestnut-colored, and white. I asked, "What are these, my lord?" The angel speaking with me said to me, "I will show you what these are." The man standing among the myrtle said, "These are those whom Adonai has sent to wander throughout the earth." Okay, let's skip a bit, and then let's go to verse 12. The angel of Adonai said, Adonai Tzvaot, how long will you keep withholding mercy from Yerushalayim and the cities of Yehuda? You've been angry with them for the past 70 years. Adonai replied with kind and comforting words to the angel who was speaking with me. Interesting that Zechariah gets to see a side of the world we don't see. He sees angel-like beings patrolling the earth. We don't see that with our natural eyes, but they patrol the earth, they wander, then they come back and they report to Adonai and they say everything is at peace. And it's like there's this reality that's going on that we don't see. That God is doing stuff, sending angels there and there and there, and he's keeping an eye on things, even though we don't see it. Even though we may think he's forgotten us, he's saying, I remember you. Even though the angel is asking, how long, Adonai, will you, let me just put it in his words, will you keep withholding mercy from Jerusalem? And we don't see that interaction. We don't even see that Adonai replies with kind and comforting words. You may be praying on your knees and not feeling like Adonai is kind or comforting. But he sees you. He hears you. And if you have returned to him, well then it's done and dusted. Just hold on. But if you still need to turn back, then maybe it's time for an introspection of what's happening in your life. Okay. Moving on. And then God speaks about how he says Jerusalem is going to be rebuilt. So, his first vision and the first plan of God is that, look, I've got a plan for Jerusalem. It's going to be rebuilt. It will become prosperous again. If we go to the other side, the last verse of, verse 17. In addition, proclaim that Adonai Tzvaot says, my cities will again overflow with prosperity. Adonai will again comfort Zion, and he will again make Yerushalayim the city of his choice. So we need to understand that God has a plan. Even though it seems like he doesn't, his plan is to dwell with us, which is Sukkot, that's what it's all about. And his plan is to rebuild Jerusalem. And in that plan, we have a place. So it's almost like God is saying, don't worry, I'm rebuilding our house. Or don't worry, I'm preparing a place for you, type of thing. Does that make sense? Which is the first vision. Let's get into the second one. Any questions so far? Or comments? Okay. Chapter 2. Well, if you're actually, chapter 1, verse 18. If you're in the CJB, chapter 2. Then I looked up and saw 4 horns. I asked the angel who was speaking to me, what are these? He answered, these are the horns that scattered Yehuda, Israel, and Jerusalem. Next, Adonai showed me 4 artisans. I asked, what are these coming to do? He said, those horns that scattered Yehuda so completely that no one could even raise his head. Well, these men have come to terrify them, to overthrow the nations that raised their horns against the land of Judah to scatter it. So what's that about? We see 4 horns, we see 4 artisans. What's happening? Anybody? Typically when we see a horn in scripture, what does it symbolize? Strength. What else? A kingdom or a king. Okay? So why 4?
Well, there's 4 horns on the altar, and they point out showing God's wrath was away, so it's also showing judgment.
Right. Though those horns, so normally God's altar points outward, right? But then didn't these horns point at Israel? So could we say God was using these other kings, nations, to bring his judgment against Israel? Could we say that? Are you guys going along with me? And then we read earlier in the verses that God had already said, they made the suffering worse. I was only a little angry at Jerusalem and Zion, but they made the suffering worse. So now these 4 artisans have come to terrify the 4 horns that, yes, they brought God's judgment, but they did it to their own satisfaction, not what Adonai had decreed. Making sense? Another thing that I was thinking with this artisan thing is that an artisan is a man who is like a craftsmanship. He makes things. So it's kind of like these man-made kingdoms, these man-made horns, because they're man-made, they can be terrified by something man-made, if that makes sense. Or something of man. Are you following me? You must tell me if I start speaking gibberish. So it's kind of like God is now coming to scatter them because they did too much scattering, so to speak. Can we move on? Anybody got any comments there? Questions? Coming into chapter 2, verse 1. I looked up and saw a man with a measuring line in his hand. I asked, where are you going? He said to me, to measure Jerusalem, to determine its width and length. Here the angel who was speaking to me went forward, and another angel went out, met him, and said to him, run and tell this young man, Jerusalem will be inhabited without walls, because there will be so many people and animals, for says Adonai, I will be for her a wall of fire surrounding her, and I will be the glory within her. Up, says Adonai, move, flee the land of the north, for I scattered you like the 4 winds of the sky, says Adonai. Move, Zion, you who are living with the daughter of Bavel, escape. For Adonai Tzevaot has sent me on a glorious mission to the nations that plundered you, and this is what he says. Anyone who injures you injures the very pupil of my eye. but I will shake my hand over them, and they will be plundered by those who were formerly their slaves. Then you will know that Adonai Tzevaot sent me. Sing, daughter of Zion, rejoice, for here I am coming, and I will live among you, says Adonai. When that time comes, many nations will join themselves to Adonai. They will be my people, and I will live among you. Then you will know that it was Adonai Tzevaot who sent me to you. Adonai will take possession of Yehuda as his portion in the Holy Land, and he will again make Yerushalayim his choice. Be silent, all humanity, before Adonai, for he has been roused from his holy dwelling. Okay, so first thing, Yerushalayim will be inhabited without walls. Nehemiah he went there to build a wall. How does this make sense? You guys know what I'm talking about Nehemiah? He went there to build the wall, right? Why does God say it'll be inhabited without walls if he went there to build the wall? Okay, it is a different time. And what, they're going to break the wall down, or? Well, there's walls, but Jerusalem is bigger. It's expanded beyond those walls. And it's secure. And, I think the fulfillment of this prophecy is still coming. But they are living in Jerusalem, and there isn't a great wall surrounding the whole greater city. That's the first part. The second part is, he says, move, flee the land of the north. This reminds me of when the Bible speaks about lust, it doesn't say resist the devil. It doesn't say stand firm when you are tempted with lust. It says flee youthful passions, because you cannot stand that. It's not about that the devil is more powerful. No, you are made to want certain things as a young man or a young woman, and you need to flee, otherwise it's going to overcome you. And that's why you see Joseph running. He doesn't say, no, my lady, listen, maybe let's just chill at the park. Maybe let's just... No, he flees, he runs. He's like, I'm not talking to you. He would not even allow himself to be in the same place as her. Even though day after day, she kept bugging him. It's like, flee, you gotta run. You cannot court with that sin. It's like the sin that easily entangles slowly, and then eventually bites you. I heard of a lady who, she went to a psychiatrist, and she was asking, in her conversations with the psychiatrist, she was like, so I've got this pet snake, this python, and normally it chills in its little glass thingy, but like lately it just comes and like lies on the bed with me. And I don't know, maybe it's lonely and whatnot. And then the doctor was like, lady, it's measuring you. Because it wants to eat you. It wants to see, can I, Don't court with that sin. You cannot play around with that. You got to run. The moment it rears its head, you got to be out the door, praying, going on to the guy chat, guys, I need you guys to pray. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time. And I think sometimes we know that, which is why we don't ask for prayer. Sorry, I didn't check if this was PG yet. But anyways, so flee. And I see the same thing here with Bavel. Flee Babylon. We're in the end times. And I don't think this is only about fleeing the physical area of Babylon. I don't think that's the case. I think this is about you. Okay, let's read it. Let's read it so that it's not just me speaking. 2 verse 4. In the CJB 2 verse 8. And said to him, run. Tell this man, a little bit lower, verse 6. In the CJB verse 10. Up, says Adonai, move, flee the land of the north, for I scattered you like the four winds of the sky, says Adonai. But move, Zion, you who are living with the daughter of Bavel. So we know that Bavel is the harlot, the mother of all whores and sins. We've done the Revelation study. Everything that is offspring of that, you need to flee from. It's in the movies, it's in the series, it's in some schools, it's in the world. Are you fleeing from it, or are you making your home near it? Is the daughter of Babel your neighbor that you're not fleeing from? Because if that's the case, you're going to be like Lot's wife, that she didn't want to leave Sodom and Gomorrah. She was still looking back. As you leave all those things, are you looking back? It says flee. Let's go down to, let's just read through from there. Verse 7. Move Zion, you who are living with the daughter of Babel, escape. For Adonai Tzvaot has sent me on a glorious mission to the nations that plundered you. And this is what he says: anyone who injures you injures the very pupil of my eye. But I will shake my hand over them, and they will be plundered by those who were formerly their slaves. Then you will know that Adonai Tzvaot sent me. Sing, daughter of Zion. Sing, daughter of Zion. Rejoice, for here I am coming, and I will live among you, says Adonai. When that time comes, many nations will join themselves to Adonai. They will be my people, and I will live among you. Then you will know that it was Adonai Tzvaot who sent me to you. Adonai will take possession of Yehuda as his portion in the Holy Land, and he will again make Yerushalayim his choice. Be silent, all humanity, before Adonai. Be silent, all humanity, before Adonai, for he has been roused from his holy dwelling. Can I just do a time check? Okay. All right, thank you. Let's see. Okay. Are we good with chapter 2? Can we go into chapter 3? Into chapter 3 we go. Verse 1. He showed me Yehoshua the Kohen Hagadol standing before the angel of Adonai with the accuser, in Hebrew, with Satan, standing at his right to accuse him. Adonai said to the accuser, may Adonai rebuke you, accuser. Indeed, may Adonai, who has made Yerushalayim his choice, rebuke you. Isn't this man a burning stick snatched from the fire? Yehoshua was clothed. Okay, before we go on. So at this point, God has already made Jerusalem his choice. He's already decreed that I will live there. I will live among you. We're going to rebuild this city. He's already decreed that there's going to be prosperity and all of that. But the enemy is busy trying to accuse. The enemy is not going to let go of the guilt of yesterday or 2 weeks back. That's what he does. He tries to get you to the point where you can't forgive yourself for what you've done. And every time you think of that sin, you break down. And you think, oh, I'm not worth anything. I'm just going to do it again anyways. What's the point of trying? And that's how we feel sometimes. Because it's a mind trip. He tries to get you to not fight. It's like if you look at the Israelites, they were an army, but they didn't realize it. Pharaoh realized it. Pharaoh said, my people, look, we need to deal wisely with these guys, because if we don't, they're going to join our enemies and fight against us and leave. He sees an army in them. So let's enslave them. Let's distract them, give them so much work that they can't fight. They don't even think about leaving. Let's enslave them. God also sees an army, because when God tells Moses and Aaron to go, he says, then I will bring my armies up out of the nation of Egypt. So you are an army. You're a soldier in an army. But, and here's the thing. Satan knows you're a soldier. He knows you're dangerous. He knows that if you were to reach your full potential, he's in trouble. God also knows that. But do you? Or are you busy with the PS5? Are you busy with Instagram? Are you busy with fill in the blank? That you're so distracted that you can't actually intercede for someone and be a soldier So you're kind of still under bondage. This is why I thank God for Pesach, because we get to remember, I'm set free from this. I'm free. I've been set free to worship. God says to Moses, tell Pharaoh to let my people go so that they can worship me. That is the reason we have been set free. It is not to be on Instagram all day. It is not to play games all day. There's nothing wrong with games, there's nothing wrong with sports, but is it your priority? Is your relationship your priority? If you had to choose between your sports and God, what would you choose? If someone invited you to a Bible study on the day that you normally go and play sports, what would you choose? If Yeshua came and said, hey, follow me, you're on your way to gym. He's like, hey, follow me. Would you be like, listen, I got spinning just for 2 hours, then where are you going to be? I'll catch you there. You'd be that guy in the scriptures that you don't want to read about. But we do that every week to God. Like, I'll catch the next Bible study, it's fine. I'm busy. Or I've been invited to a party, I've been invited to whatever. But if it was Yeshua calling you saying, follow me, I mean, the guy said, I want to bury my dad. Isn't that more important than gym? Isn't that more important than ice skating? Isn't that more important than whatever birthday party, burying your dad? And even to him, he's like, let the dead bury their own dead. And yes, we know the likelihood is that when he said bury my dad, he didn't mean the physical burial, but he meant like there was a ceremony type of thing that would happen, and it was only probably later that he would bury his dad, or his dad actually wasn't dead, and he was kind of saying, wait until my dad dies and I'll follow you. But that's neither here nor there. Point is, there was an excuse. Point is, there was an excuse which in the eyes of the excuser seemed good and right at the time. It's easy to say no to the leader of a Bible study when they say, hey, are you coming? It's easy to just say, oh, no, listen, guys, I can't make it today. But if that was Yeshua saying, follow me, then you're that guy we don't want to read about. I've been thinking more and more recently that the time we're living in feels very much like Bible times. It's so easy to imagine a verse where it's like, and in the year of President Biden, then this happened and whatnot, or I can so visualize it. Obviously, it's not in there, but we're living in such a tumultuous time where anything can happen. If something crazy happened tomorrow, we'd be like, oh, okay, and? Because we're just so used to the news, it's like, okay, we're so desensitized. And we're living in that time. But now, if we're living in a time that could easily be written about in the Bible, what would your story read? There was a disciple in Benoni, and he went to, fill in the blank. You know your story. Would you be proud reading that? The Bible says that books are opened. There's another verse, I think, is it in Malachi? I can't remember where it is, but it says, I'm paraphrasing it a lot here, but it says when God's people are together, there's like, it's recorded. What they're doing is being recorded. I'm really breaking this paraphrase, but everything we're doing is being recorded. And if you were to read your life story, if God was to open up your book to you, would you be happy that that made it into the scriptures? He left Bible study and then he went and opened his phone, and he left Bible study and then he called that person, and if it has a happy ending, Baruch Hashem. I know that when God saved me, my prayer was, God, you know that you know the future me. You know that I'm not going to stay this guy forever, so treat me as the guy who, whenever you help me to change that guy, I was like, just look at me as that guy and help me to get over this thing that keeps on making me fall. And from that prayer, he did help me. But the point is, yeah, it doesn't matter how bad the sin, if you will return. It really doesn't matter how bad it is. if you will just return. Just soften your heart and come back. Say, Abba, okay, I've been running, but I'm done running. Let's do this your way, whatever the cost. And recognize a righteous man falls 7 times, but gets back up. It doesn't say a righteous man never falls. He falls 7 times, but he gets back up. So just get back up. And get some buddies around you who are going to actually call you out on your sin. Don't get buddies around you who are going to be like, so funny, okay, whatever. Get buddies that if you go off the way, they're going to be like, bruh, look, I love you, but that's not cool. What you're doing, nah. That's who you need. That's who you need by your side. And for those who are still looking to get married, that's also who you need by your side. You can't have a husband or a wife who's going to be on some, let's what that thing is. No, you need someone with, hey, papa. That's not godly. Let's see if we can finish this chapter. Okay, so we got to end of verse 2. Yehoshua was clothed in garments covered with dung, and he was standing before the angel, who said to those standing in front of him, "Take those filthy garments off of him." Then to him he said, "See, I am taking your guilt away." I just want to break this down a bit. Okay, so Yehoshua is standing before the angel of Adonai. Satan is standing at his right to accuse him. And then Adonai said to the accuser, "May Adonai rebuke you, accuser. Indeed, may Adonai, who has made Yerushalayim his choice, rebuke you." Something that I think we need to recognize: the angel was not bold enough to rebuke Satan. Yehoshua was even not the one to rebuke Satan as the high priest. Sometimes we get into these doctrines where we're so focused on rebuking the enemy that we're not recognizing God has already rebuked the enemy. Just do what he tells you to do. And we're going to see what the instruction is to Yehoshua just now. We need to understand what's happening in the spiritual realm, for instance, so that we can behave the way we should in the physical realm. If I think the devil has not been rebuked, I'm going to go around rebuking him the whole day and think I'm making a difference. But if I understand God has already done that, I can stand on that and I can do what he tells me to do. Is that making sense? Let's read it. Maybe it'll get clearer. So Yehoshua was clothed in garments covered with dung, and he was standing before the angel, who said to those standing in front of him, "Take those filthy garments off of him." Then to him he said, "See, I am taking your guilt away. I will clothe you in fine robes." I said, "They should put a clean turban on his head." This is Zechariah speaking. "They should put a clean turban on his head." So they put a clean turban on his head and gave him fine robes to wear. While the angel of Adonai stood by, then the angel of Adonai gave Yehoshua this warning. Here's the instruction. Adonai Tzvaot says this: "If you will walk in my ways," 1, "obey my commission," 2, "judge my house and guard my courtyards." We're not all judges, but in your right, whether you're a mother, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a father, an older, let me not say older brother, but in the authority that you have, use it to the extent that God has given it to you. Don't overdo it, and don't underdo it either. So, judge my house and guard my courtyards, then I will give you free access among these who are standing here. Guarding the courtyards, when I think of God's courtyards, God says, the psalmist says, "I will enter your gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter your courts with praise." This is how we should be entering God's courts. You should not be coming into God's court without praise. You shouldn't be coming to grumble. You shouldn't be coming to whatever. I mean, you can come to cry if that's what you need to do, but you shouldn't be coming to grumble. There's a difference. But guard that courtyard, guard that holy place. Even when it comes to your quiet time, your private time, are you guarding it? Or can anything interrupt you? You're in the throne room with the king, your phone rings. If you were in front of the queen of, okay, she's passed away. If you're in front of the king of king of England, and you're in his court, you know, his royal court and everything, you're dressed nicely, and your phone rings, you're going to be like, hold on, I'm in the... Is that what you're going to do? You're going to just be embarrassed, switch it off, and then continue with what you're doing. Sometimes we treat Adonai like he's a guy at Home Affairs or Spa. Like, yeah, just give me a second, let me just take this. Guard his courtyard. Are we doing on time? I need to finish up a bit. We're right there. Okay, we're almost done. So they put a clean turban on his head. Sorry, where are we? Oh yes, so if you will walk in my ways, obey my commission, judge my house and guard my courtyards, then I will give you free access among these who are standing here. In other words, you will have free access to come into my presence. Listen, Kohen, Gadol, Yehoshua, both you and your colleagues seated here before you, because these men are a sign that I am going to bring my servant Sprout, or Tzemach. For look at the stone I have put in front of Yehoshua. On one stone are 7 eyes. I will engrave what is to be written on it, says Adonai Tzevaot, and I will remove the guilt of this land in one day. When that time comes, says Adonai Tzevaot, you will all invite each other to join you under your vines and fig trees. Okay, so last 3 things. Number 1, the stone with 7 eyes. What does that sound like? Have you guys heard anything like that before? Even if it's beyond this point in scripture? Revelations. Yes. And what does it represent? What does it say?
7 churches.
No.
7 eyes. 7 kings. I know about the angels that have eyes all around them.
Okay, so these eyes are more of, it's like the 7 spirits of God, resembling that. We also know that
7 lampstands.
it can be, but we wouldn't say that the 7 eyes are 7 churches though. But you could relate it to the 7 lampstands because we know that the lamb, how does it describe the lamb of God in Revelation? And I saw a lamb as it had been slain with, does it have 2 eyes? Does it have 1 eye? Does it have 3 eyes?
That's why I'm trying to find it. You guys.
Okay, since we're pressed for time, I'm going to move on while you guys search your brains. Okay, no, let's not move on. Let's quickly get this. Are you there, Shwani?
Yes.
I think it might be chapter 4 or 5. Is it 5?
Then I saw a lamb that looked as if it had been slaughtered, but it was now standing between the throne and 4 living beings among the 24 elders. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which represent the 7-fold Spirit of God that he sends out into every part of the earth.
Okay, so we can see those 7 eyes there. Just a second. Sorry, we're almost done. I just want to find something for you. Okay. Yeah. So, with the 7 eyes, these represent the 7-fold Spirit of God, which Yeshua has because he is God. And it's kind of like representing eyes that see everything, everywhere, all the time. He's omnipotent, he's omniscient type of thing. Not omniscient, yeah. That's the eyes. And then I will engrave what is to be written on it. So, just a sec. In Revelations 2, verse 17, It says, "To those who have ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the Messianic churches. To him winning the victory, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone on which is written a new name that no one knows except the one receiving it." So I just thought that was some interesting links if you like to do some studies. And the last thing I wanted to mention is, "I will remove the guilt of this land in one day." Which day was that?
The guilt of the land.
In one day.
In one day. What do you think it's a great day? Great and blessed day.
Which great and blessed day?
The day he returns.
Does the day he returns remove the guilt of the land?
Was it not at the crucifixion?
It was at the crucifixion. I'll remove it in one day. Okay. And then, when that time comes, says Adonai Tzavaot, "You will all invite each other to join you under your vines and fig trees." There is joy. There is joy at the end. And I love this part. It's kind of like the Bible studies of the future will be under vines and fig trees. That sounds pretty sweet to me. I don't know about you. I mean, vine is sweet, fig trees are sweet, but never mind. Okay, I think we're done for today. If there's any questions, we can tackle them after, but otherwise,
I have a comment.
Yes.
You mentioned regarding angels, which are, well, just the thought that you mentioned regarding, when the angel is in kingdom. If you look at the book of Jude, Michael himself understands where the authority comes from. It says in verse,
Yeah.
I'll read from verse 6, "And I remind you of the angels who did not stay within the limits of authority God gave them, but left the place where they belong." So Michael understands, and the angels understand that they have a limit of authority, and it is only God, because as we read further down, it's only God that can rebuke Satan. Even us as human beings have no right to rebuke Satan. I just thought
100%. So there's two ways to look at this. On the one hand, 100%, which is what we saw in Zechariah, that it was God rebuking Satan. On the other hand, there's the essence where it's like when Yeshua was rebuking Peter, it's like, "Get behind me, Satan." Sometimes you got to rebuke that thought. Sometimes you got to rebuke whatever it is, a spirit of fear, and you got to be like, "Get out of here." And you have that authority. And the thing is, it's kind of like commanding something to leave because you have that authority to cause it to leave. Like Paul, when he's walking in town and this girl is like saying all this stuff because she's got the snake spirit in her, and he rebuked it. Come out of her. And Yeshua does that oftentimes, and he's like, he'll rebuke things. Sometimes God can instruct you to rebuke a sickness. Jesus did that with Peter's mom's fever. She was sick with a fever, and it says he rebuked the fever. So there's an element of study maybe that might be necessary here, but what I wanted to point out is that there's also this doctrine of people who go around just rebuking everything all the time. And I think we just need to be aware of what we're doing, is what I'm saying. So 100%, only God can rebuke. But then there is an element where don't allow certain things to just stay in your mind or in your space. But also recognize Paul didn't rebuke that snake spirit the first time he saw it. It took a couple days before he was like, "Okay, you know what, I've had it."
But I think it comes down, and I agree with what you're saying, but I also agree with the fact of you, again, understanding your delegated authority given to you by Yeshua, because of the fact that even the sons of Sceva could not cast out the demons.
Yeah.
It's walking in authority.
Yes.
So it's recognizing your authority. It's not going around going, "Oh, I rebuke that, I rebuke that," like a magic spell kind
Yeah.
of thing that you're pulling rabbit out of a hat. I'll show you. There's nothing like that. We have to understand that teaching, it's a heresy, it's false, it's dangerous. we are warned that even the angels are careful on those matters. In that piece, in the New Testament, it's the same. But I think what you're trying to say there, Billy, is also, yes, there is a moment when you stand up in authority and you speak towards that. But it's also not to be confused with resistance. Because the Bible teaches that we must resist the devil and he will flee. So in other words, it's a case of, I was challenged this week, in the last 2 weeks I was challenged to a degree where I was tempted to leave reading scripture, to forget it all, and just to give up on it. Well, I resisted that temptation. I did not rebuke it.
Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yes.
So in other words, the way I resisted it, by the way, is to open the Bible and read. You know, that's that kind of thing. Afrikaans says a word that says, deursettingsvermoë. It's persist in it, regardless of whether you feel like it or not, regardless of whether the flesh is able to do it, and you don't feel like it now. You just get down and do it. And guys, yeah, it sounds easy now for me to say, but believe me, it was not easy. I mean, I didn't feel like it at all. That's the honest to goodness truth. And I had 100 excuses, and I'm exaggerating a bit, but I could have actually probably got 100 excuses why I am justified now. Because it doesn't do anything for me. But that's resisting. So just so you guys know, the difference between just going around rebuking left, right, and center, and I rebuke that in the name of, oftentimes it's just a call that we should resist him so that he can flee. And then, by the way, he did flee from him. So that you know, that temptation that was dangling in front of him, lead us not into temptation. That's what he teaches us to pray.
100%. I agree with you. And I think what we're saying as well is that there's a level of discernment. Because Paul, a typical person, if you're walking around and let's say someone recognizes you from a Bible study, they're like, hey, there's that person from a Bible study. You should go to that Bible study because they really speak the truth there. You'd be like, amen, brother. You wouldn't think there's a demon in that person. So there's a level of discernment to understand when is it the right time to speak? When is it the right time to act? When is it the right time to pray about this or that, whatever? Because even though Paul recognized it the first time, he didn't necessarily deal with it the first time. But anyways, I agree with you guys 100%. Okay, are we all good? Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, blessed are you, Lord our God and King of the universe. You have given us your word. We thank you, my God, for this Sabbath, for the blessing of rest. We thank you for the word that you've given. Father, may it feed us, may it nourish us. May it fill all the parts in us that are empty and longing, Father, for you. I pray that we would long for you, God, as the deer pants for the water. Please, Father, give us the realization of how badly we need you, so that we would not stray, so that we would not be distracted, Father, so that we would seek after you with all of our heart. In the name of Yeshua, my God, I pray. Please keep us for the rest of this day, for the rest of this week. Help us to watch our words, to watch our thoughts. Help us, God, to reflect you to the world in every situation and moment. And I pray that, God, may you live in us as we continue to trust you, and may we surrender to you in the name of Yeshua. Help us, God, to choose what's right. Give us your spirit, Father. You have said that you will give us your spirit and you will cause us to want to keep your word. I pray, God, that you give us your spirit, Father. Keep filling us, keep leading us, and help us, Father, to get to the state, the standard that you have called us to be at. In the name of Yeshua, I pray. Amen. Shabbat